Welcome to this Wargames Delivered tutorial for Bolt Action Band of Brothers. I'll be showing you how to paint the US Airborne models in an early war uniform, and I'll be using the Wargames Delivered paint set to do so. So sit back and get ready to follow along. So to paint this early war US Airborne infantryman, we've sprayed it with necrotic flesh, which gives us a nice head start and also helps us get those lighter colours on there. So the first thing we're going to do is base the trousers, and the colour I'm going to use this is army green. So nice and easy, just going to paint these in. Now take your time not to spill onto other areas that are going to be slightly different colours. And we're going to leave the shirt in the necrotic flesh, and that's going to kind of be the brighter colour. So just work that on. You can see it's covering okay. You may need a second coat, but that's fine. Let's just get that done, and then we'll come back and we'll start to base the pouches and the straps next, and then we'll shade all of the material elements together. We'll also paint that helmet, and then we'll move on to the other areas. So you can see, like it is covering okay, but we will need a second coat just to get that nice even coverage. We'll paint all the packs and straps with troll claw because the early war uniform was a little lighter coloured than the later war, which is predominantly green colours. So we're just going to paint this all over. You can see it's covering okay, but we are going to need a second coat of it. So to do this, I'm going to paint all the straps and all the belts, etc., all the pouches around the front as well with this. But we'll shade it all together, and I'll start to tie things in so that we don't have too much of a bright differentiation when it comes to finishing up the model. So get that done. Like I said, it's going to need two coats, and then we'll pop the first shade on. Once that's all dry, we're going to shade the entirety of all the uniform using military shader. So this is over the green, it's over that troll claw, and the colour we use for this is military shader. So just work this around everything. Nice and simple. Now it will start to give this a bit of a greeny hint, but that's okay because it'll help us highlight it later, and it'll help blend it into the armour, so it's not the rest of the uniform, so it's not quite so stark. So all we're doing is painting this all over the uniform. We'll paint it over the helmet as well, just to get a little bit of darker colour on there. So just keep that moving, and then when it's completely dry, we'll come back and start to highlight the uniform. So we've got some nice shade on the model there. Don't worry if it's a little bit too shiny, because we'll dull it all down right at the end. So I'm going to paint the flesh next, and the base I'm going to use for this is tanned flesh. So normally I do this last, but I think there's enough of it to kind of get done now. And if I do it now, I can afford to be a little bit messy with it as well, as you just saw there. So just painting this over the features, get that done. It covers quite well, so you're probably only going to need one coat of it. And then once that's all done, we'll come back and we'll shade it when it's dry next. We'll shade all of that flesh using some flesh wash, and again just painting this over all of the skin, working it into those recesses, and then once that's completely dry, we'll come back and highlight it next. Just be careful around the bits of clothing. We don't want to spill it onto there. If we do, we can always just paint over. The first highlight we'll do is back to that tanned flesh. We're looking to catch those most raised areas. So on the face, that'll be things like the cheekbones. If he's got a bare head, then his brow. And then when it comes to the hands, we're just looking to catch, again, the raised parts, leaving that flesh shade in the recesses. So it's nice and straightforward, nice and easy. Take your time with it. And then once that's dry, we'll come back in and we'll add a final highlight just to make it pop a little bit. We'll pop a last highlight on using some Barbarian flesh. So again, we're just looking to catch the most exposed areas, just to give us a little bit of shape in some of that darkness, and also catching the raised areas of the fingers again. Looking to get this inside that previous highlight. So it's nice and easy. Get that done, and then we'll start the highlighting of the uniform next. We'll highlight the jacket first, and the colour we're going to use for this is that base colour, necrotic flesh. And what we're looking to do is just paint over and catch those raised areas, leaving the military shader in those recesses. So this should be fairly straightforward. You may need a couple of coats to get it looking just right, and obviously being careful around areas you've already finished, but it is, like I said, a fairly straightforward stage. Just work your way around, get that done, and we'll add another highlight once we're finished, just to make the jacket pop and stand out a little bit. And to highlight that uniform, we're just going to take a little bit of skeleton bone, and we're going to focus this on those sharpest edges and sharpest, most raised points. So we don't want to put too much on. If you do like I've done, then just clean your brush off, and then you can wipe most of it away. And you can always go back in and paint over that with some necrotic flesh. So it's fairly straightforward to do. Add a little bit over here as well. Again, like I said, it's just the folds that we're looking for, because this just helps add to the kind of pop that you'll get on the tabletop. So it's nice and simple, nice and easy step. We'll highlight the trousers next, and the colour we're going to use is that base colour of army green. So nice and easy. We're looking for where we've got those kind of folds, leaving the darker military shader in those recesses. You can see there that it's kind of spilled a little bit, it's a little too dark. So what I'll do there is just take my time and just slowly build up the army green over that area. So I'm not putting the paint on too thick, but I'm actually getting a nice highlight effect without worrying too much about getting it into those recesses there. So that's something to guard against when you do put the shader on, is it pooling. I've also got the helmet to do as well, so I'm just going to highlight the top of the helmet. Nice and simple, where I've got really blotchiness from the shade, so probably going to need to give that a second coat as well, but that's okay, nothing major. So I'll let that dry into it, and then we'll come back and add that final highlight. The last highlight we'll pop on these trousers is going to be with some mouldy clothes, which is quite a bright green, but as it dries it'll blend in nicely. And again, what we're looking to do is just catch those most raised parts of the green trousers, so along those folds, nice and simple and straightforward. And again, the focus is making it just pop up on that tabletop from 6 foot away. So nice and simple, nice and easy. Take your time with this. It's a good opportunity to practice your brushwork. Once that's all done, we'll come back and we'll highlight the webbing next. Highlight all of these packs. We're going to go back to that troll claws, and we're just going to focus along those edges. Now you may notice that while I'm doing this, I'm kind of bouncing my brush, and what I'm doing is I'm actually stippling. So when I'm stippling, what I'm doing is I'm making sure that I haven't got too much paint on my brush, and I'm basically putting lots of little dots on the model and focusing on those raised edges. And the reason for that is that it'll actually blend in really nicely with the colour underneath, so it'll tint it rather than giving me sharp highlights, which I don't really want for this. So work your way around, just pop in the tip of your brush along all these elements. And when you're happy with that, we'll come back and we'll add a final highlight to it, just to increase or just to desaturate it a little bit and be a little bit more realistic looking. I'm going to go back to skeleton bone for that last highlight. I'm kind of doing exactly the same thing there, where I'm just tapping the brush along those sharpest edges, just to give me that little bit of pattern and texture. And if you've got too much moisture on the paint, then you can always tap it off onto a paper towel just to take that moisture out, and then work your way back along the model. So again, this is a nice and easy, simple technique. So we'll move on to painting some of the harder elements next, such as the wood and the boots. And yeah, the model's looking pretty good so far. Not much left to do. So we'll paint the gaiters next. We'll paint the boots and the wood on the rifle as well, because we're going to shade them all with the same colour. So I'm going to use fur brown on the gaiters, which you can see is covering okay. Just going to be careful not to put on too thick so you obscure any detail. If you do, just wick it away. So that's a nice and easy, straightforward part. Being careful around those trousers you've already finished, of course, and make sure that you do both sides. So once that's done and you've got a nice even coverage, we'll do the boots next, the jump boots, before we move on to the wood on the weapon and the metal parts as well. So we'll paint the shoes and any other wooden elements with oak brown. Again, this is a paint that doesn't quite cover fantastically well, so we're going to need to do 2 coats of this. And if you've thinned it down at all with any water, then you're probably going to end up having to do maybe 3 or 4. So just work that around. So like I said, we're going to do the boots. We're going to do the handle here of the trenching shovel. And any wood parts on the weapon as well. So we've got the handle. You can see there it's kind of not covering very well at all. So it's just the nature of the paint, unfortunately. So we're just going to do what we can with it, and then we'll come back and like I said, it's going to take 2, maybe 3 coats on there, but hopefully once that's done, we'll be able to come back and shade it all together. Next, we'll base all of the metallic parts using gunmetal. So just take your time with this, because you're going to be painting over parts that you've already finished. So we're looking at parts on the weapon. And we're also looking at things like, make sure you've got a point on your brush actually. Sort of, we've got some pop buttons there and things like that. Then we've got the clasps that go around everything here. So just work your way around, get that done. And once that's finished, we're ready to shade all those areas that we've just base coated together at the same time. Nice and easy. And we'll do that next. Also just realised that I've not painted the leather strap on the rifle, so I'm going to use fur brown for this as well, so it's a different colour to the oak brown of the rifle. Like I said, we'll shade that all together anyway, so it should blend in nicely. So the colour we'll use for all that shading is going to be dark tone, and we're just going to brush this all over those areas that we've base coated. Take your time when you get to things and parts that you've already finished, such as the trousers there, but really this is a fairly straightforward step that you don't need to see me do too much of. The important thing is that if we're putting a lot on in some areas, we don't want to let it pool too much. So just keep an eye on it as it dries. So I'm going to paint along there. Oops, you can see that the fur brown on the rifle is still a bit wet there, so that's my fault for going too fast. On the leather strap, I should say. But on the rest of it, it's all dry, so we're just going to paint the rifle, and we'll come back to that fur brown when it's dry. Nice and easy, nice and straightforward. So we'll let that dry and come back and start highlighting. So we'll highlight all of the dark brown areas first, and the colour we're going to use is leather brown. So we're focusing on the boots. So what we're just looking to do is catch those kind of raised areas that are going to catch the light. You can see I'm moving the model around on under the camera, and that's okay. You don't have to hold your model in one place, just hold it in the place that really you're going to get the best grip. And the other thing we're going to do is add a little bit of a wood grain on the wooden part. So what we're doing is just painting some nice thin lines along that wood, just looking to accentuate the pattern or the shape of the model. So it just adds a bit more interest to that wood, so it's not just a flat brown blob in the middle. So there we are. Work your way around and get that done over all of the parts where you think they need it, and then we'll highlight the gaiters and the fur brown areas next. So to highlight the gaiters, we're going to go back to fur brown. So again, we're just kind of catching the edges of this. It's not a massively light highlight. We don't actually need one because of how the model is set. All the focus is kind of going to be in this area here, so we can get away with not having to highlight too much along the feet. And when we base it as well, it'll kind of all blend in quite nicely anyway. And don't forget, we've got the rifle strap as well, so all I'm doing with that is just catching the shape of the model with the tip of the brush, and it gives you a nice crisp highlight like that. Nice and easy. The last thing we need to do before we paste the model is just take some anti-shine and paint this all over. And this will unify the surface and pull all the kind of colours together. It'll also help bring out some of the highlights we've done. So really we just want to paint this all over everything. It's really important you don't put it on too heavily in one spot, because if you do that, you would run the risk of it drying too quickly and drying not quickly enough rather, and leaving white pools on the model. Now, you can save that by painting gloss varnish over it and then repainting it with matte, but if we can avoid it in the first place, that is the best thing. So get that done, paint all of it with the anti-shine matte, and then when we come back, we'll just base it quickly and have a look at it on the turntable. Basing the model is nice and easy. Just paint some PVA glue and then just some mixed flock. Dust it off, wipe the edge. And if you're not happy with how some of that's lined up, you can just wipe it off and then start again. Nice and easy, nice and simple. So we'll let that dry. We'll have it on the turntable next. And there we have it. This US Airborne model in an early war uniform is done and ready for the bolt action battlefield. Make sure you check out all of our other tutorials so you know how to paint the whole box. We're also going to give away one Band of Brothers set to a lucky winner. You have just 2 days to enter from the release date of this video, so make sure you do so using the link in the description. Remember to check out Wargames Delivered for all your wargaming and hobby needs. Our links below. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.